So hello everybody and welcome back. Before I start doing reviews or something, I want to clear some stuff up because I see on so many vehicles it seems like some people think that anything with tracks and a gun is automatically a tank. And a tank refers to a main battle tank and not just something with tracks and guns. Here I have a little lineup of some of my vehicles, and we have self-propelled aircraft guns, self-propelled artillery, a couple of light tanks, tank destroyer, and yeah, there's different kinds of vehicles. They're not all just tanks. And I'm going to go over a little bit of what they do. So first here, we'll look at some self-propelled anti-aircraft artillery. This is an M163 Vulcan and a ZSU-23-4. Now there's many other vehicles that fit in this category. There's also the ZSU-57-2. There's the M42 Duster. There's the Chaparral, which is a M113 that has, they put an anti-aircraft gun turret on it, but they have also a M113 that has a Sidewinder launch system on it, which is really cool, and I have it. Do it some of these days. There's many other ones. They have half-tracks too. They had half-tracks that have anti-aircraft guns on it. In World War II, the Germans were putting anti-aircraft guns on everything. They had, I have an example too, like they field modified a whole bunch of half-tracks with anti-aircraft guns because the aircraft became a big problem. But this is also not a tank, it's a half-track. It's an infantry vehicle, actually. I built the frame inside for the base for myself. Added it into the model. I think it turned out good. I'm doing that with the Pack 40 as well. But I haven't figured out how the base should be yet. So these are self-propelled aircraft, anti-aircraft artillery. So these are two examples of tank destroyers. We have a Su-100 Russian, and a Marder 3M. That's a Austrian M. It looks kind of like an SPG, but because it has a dedicated anti-tank gun, it makes it a tank destroyer. Usually, a SPG has an artillery gun on it, but this is a Pack 40, so it's an anti-tank gun, which makes it a tank destroyer, as well as the Su-100. They both have tracks. They both have anti-tank guns, but they're not. The difference is that they don't have a movable turret. That makes them not tanks. This one as well. This is an anti-tank. This is the heavy tank destroyer, the Yacht Tiger. This thing had a huge gun, and it was, it's not a tank. It's because it has no turret. It just has this case mantle, but it was strong. But the problem with the tank destroyers and why they stopped using them is because it got the turn to shoot everything, and these things didn't turn very fast. So if a tank comes over here, if a tank comes up to the flank, yeah, he's toast. And it doesn't matter. The tank can get close enough to shoot him and penetrate, because they can't turn fast enough. But I love this model. I had to show it too. So these two are both infantry fighting vehicles. They're not designed to fight against tanks, but they do have anti-tank capabilities. Like the BMP-1 here, it has a SPAG missile. They're very dangerous to tanks, but it only has one. And the small cannon, that's for light armor. Of course, the infantry that it carries also has anti-tank weapons, but infantry is like our main problem in mines, because I was a tanker. The Warrior, there are versions of it that do have anti-tank missiles as well, but the normal version only has the 30mm cannon. But they do have an anti-tank version as well. That has I guess something similar to the tow missile launcher that the Bradley has. Also, the M113 is not an IFV. It's not an infantry fighting vehicle. It's an armored personnel carrier. That's another another type. So here we actually have a group of tanks, and these are light and medium tanks. In World War II, they had light, medium, heavy, and super heavy tanks. After the war, they changed the tanks some. It wasn't directly after the war, but sometime after, because the M41 was a tank after the war, and it was still a light tank. But they changed and they went to a main battle tank. So they were all classified the same. But in World War II, it was differently. You had your light tanks. This is a Panzer I. And this is a You see, they all have, you know, like their tracks, and they all have movable turrets, even though they're guns. Like the Panzer I was at the beginning of the war, and they only used machine guns. And a lot of tanks back then, they only had small cannons like this and a machine gun. And they slowly went up from machine guns to small cannons to bigger cannons to bigger cannons, because everybody was competing to see who had the thicker armor and who had the bigger cannon. That's how it works, unfortunately. You see, this is like really beginning of the war, and a little time goes by. This is also pretty early in the war too, but Japan was a little bit ahead at that time with tanks, because they already were using decent cannons, but they weren't anything like what came later. A couple years later only, because this is we started using those around 39, I think, and this was also what 41 when the T-34 came out, in big numbers at least. Panzer 39T. Then we have a Type 97 Chiha from Japan, and we have a T-34-76. All light and medium tanks from World War II. Well, as far as heavy tanks, the only one I have available to show right now is the King Tiger. But you also have the late version Panzer IV, the Tiger I, you got M26 is a heavy tank, the KB1, KB2, and the JS series from Russia were all heavy tanks. These are really heavily armored and heavily gun tanks. Then very late in the war they came up with super heavy tanks. This is a Panzer VIII Mouse. Not really a good idea. They were too heavy. I mean, the gun could kill anything though, both of them. I mean, the main gun was freaking huge, like 280 I think. And even the coax was huge. There was also other ones. Other countries tried to do it too, but this was the only one that actually was partially built. They had a couple holes built in the turret. But it's also the only one I have, and probably the only one I will have. But I do have something cool, and it was the only prototype tank I've ever bought, and it's a German tank, and it has two big anti-aircraft guns on it, and that's really cool. I did a review of it already too. Really cool. Probably also not a good idea, but you know. Now after the war, they changed tanks some. This is the M41 Walker Bulldog. This is probably one of the last light tanks that they built, and it was after the war. But they changed the doctrine to go to main battle tanks. T-72, K-88, and this is Leclerc from France. K-88 from Korea, South Korea. I put a metal barrel on here, and it's not holding paint very well. I've already painted it twice, but it still looks like a good tank. The Leclerc is pretty cool. I used to have a Challenger 2 built. It was broken. I had a M1 that was built. I don't know where it went. Got lost in moving or whatever. But these are all main battle tanks. That's how they changed the doctrine. Everything it's not exactly the same size, but they're all generally the same size with comparable guns. Even though, I mean, T-72 had a 125 compared to some having between 90 and 120, like the M1 has 120 millimeter. Some of the M48s, the patent tanks had like 90 millimeter guns. I'm not really sure what the K88 has, but it looks like a smaller caliber. But this looks definitely like a 120 millimeter. Even though it's also different than the gun on the Abrams. But they have, you know, comparable gun sizes. The later patents had 105s, like the M60s, and they also have similar armor, but the armor always, they keep like leaving the armor on the tank generally in the same area, but then they add other like reactive armor and stuff to it too. They still increase armor, but it's in a different way. They don't increase the weight and thickness of the armor on the tank. They do other things that make it better, like depleted uranium or stuff like that. Reactive armor. I love my T-72. I don't know why. It's kind of cool looking thing. Little winter camouflage. That was the second winter camouflage I did, and I think that one turned out better. The T-34 was the first one, and that was like kind of a disaster, I guess. So that's tanks. And what's not tanks? The SPGs, the SPAGs, the infantry fighting vehicles, the armored personnel carriers are all not tanks. They are armored vehicles, they are tracked vehicles. They do have guns, even though most personnel carriers don't really have. They might have a 50 cal or something on it, but. And what is tanks? Tanks have thick armor piercing capability with the guns, and a movable turret. That's the three big things that really make a tank. And next time, we're going to look at something else that's not a tank. That's a self-propelled gun bishop.